Hi folks, it's Keith, Victor Echo 3, Sierra Victor Quebec, and Victor Alpha 3, Kilo Echo India. And I'm just going to do something a little different today. We're going to do a sort of prelude or, a description really of the park that we're going to activate. And in this case, it's Victor Echo 4855, which is a National Historic Site for the Battle of the Windmill on Windmill Point near Prescott. It's an interesting place. It's one that very few Canadians know about. It's not really taught in our history in schools. I suspect probably because it was a rebellion against the British authorities. And, we just don't do those things in Canada. Now, Fort Wellington is just a couple of kilometers from here. The other side of the river is the United States with Ogdensburg. And sometimes we weren't all that friendly with the Americans. But this battle actually was launched by Canadians. And in the 1830s and 1837-38, back in then, there was a bit of rebellion going on against the British authorities and the British government. And this is where this one comes in. There was a march in Toronto. That was put down by the British, and a lot of the Canadian supporters fled to the United States. And whilst they were there, they created, along with a lot of Americans who thought the Canadians really needed their help, they created what were called hunter lodges, and they were known as hunters, appropriate for doing Pota. It was a fairly large number of them, estimate somewhere over 200 of these so-called hunter lodges existed. Estimates put it at about 20,000 members. So for the small British population here, that was a considerable threat. The idea was to do a sneak attack, essentially surprise attack on Fort Wellington, capture the fort, and go from there. Reality was, the day they showed up at the fort and during the evening, someone gave them the alert and the British were waiting, so they backed off and they came down to Windmill Point, which is this one here. So when they arrived, there were about 250 rebels, let's call them that, backed up by lots of ammunition, rifles. They even had artillery with them. And they landed at what is Windmill Point. And that's where we're going to be today. We'll see you there shortly. So this is just a quick stop on the way to the windmill. This was the objective of the rebels' attack. This is Fort Wellington, located in Prescott, across the river from Ogdensburg, which is where most of the rebels came from. So it's a fairly imposing piece. So here we are, we're at the site of the Battle of the Windmill. You can see a house off in the distance there. That's an original house. The battlefield that exists today is only 10% of the original site. So if you look from where I'm standing here, there's the windmill, 60 feet high. So quite a commanding view of the surrounding area. So if I go off to this side, the battlefield extended out 400 to 450 yards from here in a big semicircle. So now we just have houses which have sort of encroached on the area. But it gives you an idea, and off down that way as well, about another 400, 450 yards. So it was a fairly large site, and now, like I say, reduced to about 10% of what it originally was. The rebels, invaders, whatever you want to call them, were led by a gentleman who claimed to be Polish, a Colonel von Schultz. In reality, he was born in Finland, educated in the Swedish military, had fought in an uprising in Poland, and apparently served in the French Foreign Legion at one time. So this is sort of the area. You've got picnic tables and things like that, so it's a nice little area. This will give you a slightly better view of Ogdensburg on the other side. The river narrows here a little bit, and they would have come along the river
And then it's about a 30-foot climb up the slopes here to the windmill. Battle here was fought from the 12th of November to the 16th of November, 1838. Most of the attackers originated from across the river, which is Ogdensburg over there. And it's claimed during the battle, people lined the shoreline, watching it from afar. This is the entrance to the mill, which was eventually converted to a lighthouse. It's hard to imagine, but at one point, this was a pretty hard-fought place. The rebels had anywhere from 190 to 250 men. I've seen those numbers in fairly reputable sources. The British would eventually mass some 2,000 troops and militia, along with artillery. There, so the radio is installed, or at least hooked up in its usual spot. I haven't attached the battery yet. The antenna's on though. Number one, never forget your antenna to attach it. Now, one of the things a lot of people forget when we make these videos is there's an awful lot of people out there who have never done this before, have no clue what we're doing, and are trying to learn. So I thought, based on some of the questions I get asked, maybe I would expand on it just a little bit with this video, seeing I am back at the same park that I've done a couple of times before. So some people were asking about the battery. So most of these batteries, Canadian prices, somewhere between 80 and 100 bucks. The one that I use, you can get at Cabela's. You can either order it online, or you can, if you've got one near us, feel like we do here in Ottawa, you can go out and you can get it. And this is the battery here. Excellent little battery. Getting some glare from the sun there. It's an excellent little battery. You can see by the size of my hand on it that this is not very big, but it will give me 10 hours anyways, and maybe a bit less with my radio. The ICOM is known for using a bit more power when you transmit, but you don't have to transmit at 100 watts either, and there's lots of studies and there's videos out there of the amateurs testing, what's the signal strength at, say, 5 watts, 10 watts, 20 watts. 50 watts and so on. So if you're trying to conserve power, maybe keep it around, anywhere between 20 and 50. Your battery will last a bit longer. Well, that's the side of the battery. You can see it sitting on the dash. There's my GPS beside it. So it's not very big. It's very lightweight. So if you're backpacking in anywhere, it's good. And I can say it's definitely a good quality battery. Now, when you buy these, and this is important, you need a special charger for them. You cannot use a regular battery charger like you'd use for a car battery. So the first time you buy one, you're going to need a battery charger. They're going to cost you, whatever, another 30, 40, 50 bucks, but you can use them on multiple batteries. So that first battery you get is going to be a little bit more expensive. Victor Echo 3, Sierra Victor Quebec calling CQ. Parks on the air from Victor Echo 4855.
Kilo Echo number 4, Quebec, Charlie Yankee.
All right, Kilo Echo, I believe it was number 4, Quebec, Charlie Yankee, QSL.
Roger, 5555, Alabama, Alpha Lima, over.
All right, thank you for Alabama. You are probably a 5'9" into this park, Victor Echo 4855. I want to make sure that I have the call as Kilo Echo 4, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Kilo Echo number 4, Quebec, Charlie Yankee.
Hey, thank you very much for the contact. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Bye-bye.
CQ Parks on the air, CQ Parks on the air. Victor Echo 3, Sierra Victor Quebec in park. Victor Echo 4855, standing by.
Kilo 4, Foxtrot Zulu Golf.
Kilo 4, Foxtrot Zulu Golf. Well, I wrote down a K, but that's not going to do any good. Kilo Foxtrot, let's start this again. Kilo 4, Foxtrot, Zulu, Golf. You are 5858 into Victor Echo 4855.
QSL 58 into Victor Echo 4855. You're about a 5 and 5, 55 into North Carolina, QSL.
Hey, thank you for the 5-5. We appreciate it. That's our first one from North Carolina today. Thanks very much for hunting us.
Yeah, thanks for the activation. You have a great day. 73.
73. CQ Pota, CQ Pota. Victor Echo 3, Sierra Victor Quebec in, Victor Echo 4855. Standing by.
Kilo Charlie 0, Uniform Hotel, Papa.
I have a Kilo Charlie 0 Uniform Hotel Papa. Nice signal. You're 5-9 into Victor Echo 4855.
Roger that. You're 5-9 into Minnesota, and you as well have a nice signal. Thanks for the activation. Have fun. 7-3.
73. Thanks very much for hunting us. So there you go. As you can see, it's a hot day here in the car. Would have been better to have sat outside and put the mast up and run the wire antenna, but this is what we're into today. It was supposed to be a quick activation, and it was. We did very well, though, all things considered, and considering the bands are up and down and all over the place. We ended up with, let's see, about 26 contacts in the space of a little over an hour. So relatively good and lots of fun just the same, and always nice to hear signals from parts of the country that we don't normally get. So Victor Echo 3, Sierra Victor Quebec. We're calling this one, calling it a day. 73 from Victor Echo 4855, Battle of the Windmill site. 73.
Well, that was quite a successful activation considering band conditions were fairly poor. There were some people I was talking to, you'd hear them crystal clear and then boom, they were gone. But it was a short activation, 31 minutes, made 26 contacts, which is, as far as I'm concerned, is excellent. Just used the hamstick, MFJ 20-meter hamstick on the roof. And, I was getting out to Minnesota, Wisconsin, Florida, Georgia, even Utah, Wyoming, and so on. So it's not bad with a hamstick. And now, keep in mind as well, this was a brutally hot day, which is one of the reasons I cut it a little bit short. But around 31 minutes, 26 contacts, that's all very good. Now, for those who are thinking of going there, a couple of things come out. One, let's wrap up what happened to the people there. When you're on that site, you're very cognizant of the fact that a fair number of people were killed there. Based on your sources you look at, it's somewhere between 50 and 80 of the so-called rebels or, insurgents, whatever term you want to use. The rebels, 50 to 80 of them were killed. Somewhere around 13 British and Canadian militia were killed. So that's a fair number of people in that small area. So you keep that in mind when you're there. This is a somewhat special spot. Now, what happened to when it was all over? Well, the British obviously, back with their Canadians, eventually got to about 2,000 men, pushed everybody back into the windmill, and they simply waited for heavy artillery to come up from Montreal, which it did come up by steamer. And once the heavy artillery arrived, well, basically it was game over for the people inside. And they surrendered. Now, of those that surrendered, 11 of them were hung down in Kingston, including Colonel von Schultz. He was one of the ones who was hung. Some 60 others were exiled to Australia, which at that time was a prison colony. Let's get that right. That was a prison colony. Most of the others were either pardoned or, given lighter terms. Now, it's interesting because with the colonel, and like I say, he was always spoken of as being Polish, but he isn't. The lawyer who defended him in Kingston was a young lawyer by the name of John A. Macdonald, who would eventually go on to become the first Prime Minister of modern-day Canada. So it's interesting how all of this intertwines with our history. Um, Interesting times and interesting sight. Now, what will happen if you go down there? Keep in mind there are no washrooms. However, if you come in off of the 401, which is the main highway, and for me, that's about, I'm going to say a 40-45 minute trip for me out of Ottawa, maybe a bit more for some people if you're downtown. If you get off at exit 716, it's sort of a main road, takes you right down to the river. Actually, you come out quite close to Fort Wellington. And along there, you have your usual, your Burger Kings, McDonald's, Tim Hortons. So you've got washrooms and you've got food. Bring it back. There's some nice picnic areas at this little park. So there you go. We'll wrap this up and we'll give you some of the stats shortly. And in the meantime, it was fun. I thank all those hunters who found me and contacted me. I certainly appreciate it, and I hope I helped you out at the same time. So, Keith, Victor Echo 3, Sierra Victor, Quebec, wishing everyone a great day.